history has its weird way of repeating itself. Like Sydney versus Brisbane, where Brisbane won both games. Suck shit, Swannies. Gold Coast Suns for life. I didn't even know they were a team. They just sound like they're the shittest. But for those of you who are old enough to remember John Hewson as opposition leader, why are you watching this channel? Go watch something that is targeted at your demographic like House Rules. I know it's a shame that Jamie doesn't get his cock out for a living anymore, but much like him, you've got to grow up. Yes, I will get my cock out in this video at some point. Anyway, back when Hewson was Liberal Party leader in the 90s, Australia was dealing with the aftermath of the 1987 global stock market crash, and because there's no difference between us and Aztecs apparently, that's obviously the Emperor's fault, and as a result, the Australian Prime Minister must be punished for this global crash! I know hindsight's 2020, but I think Hawke should have been really more bullish on Ansett shares. Anyway, as a result, it really looks like John Hewson was on the verge of potentially knocking Labor out of government and putting together his highly infamous Fight Back! That's right, Hewson was putting exclamation marks in slogans before it was cool. Fight Back was his economic manual to rescue Australia's economy. And what was the core visionary proposal of it? A general sales tax to broaden the tax base. The GST. That's it. That's all he had to explain. But when he tried to, this happened.
If I buy a birthday cake from a cake shop and GST is in place, do I pay more or less for that birthday cake?
Well, it will depend whether cakes today in that shop are subject to sales tax or they're not, firstly. And they may have a sales tax on them. Let's assume that they don't have a sales tax on them, and then that birthday cake is going to be sales tax free. Then, of course, you wouldn't pay, it would be exempt. There would be no GST on it under our system. If it was one with a sales tax today, it would attract the GST, and then the difference would be the difference between the two taxes, whatever the sales tax rate is on birthday cakes, how it's decorated, because there'll be sales tax perhaps on some of the decorations as well. And then, of course, the price will reflect that accordingly. That's
one of the most famous events in Australian history, right up there with Axel Whitehead when he flashed the arias, and in both instances, both men were caught with their dick in their hand. And I will make it a trifecta by revealing my cock as promised. Oh, promise fulfilled, suck shit perverts. Hewson's explanation fucked him though. While Keating pulled, I think, the most boss move in Australian political history, where he one day stood up in Parliament without consulting the rest of the party, acting on pure political instinct, and said, if Labor loses the next election, we will see that as a mandate from the public that you want the GST, so Labor's going to wave it through the Senate. Essentially, he was telling the public, listen, you c***, I know you want to dump me and think that we'll keep you safe from the GST. Nope, it's me or the tax. Pick one. Bosh. Anyway, then Keating was booted after serving one more term and John Howard introduced the GST. What's the point of all of this? It's to say that contrary to the Liberals' claims of being the low-taxing party, the Liberals are responsible for the biggest tax hike in history. They love taxes. They just like taxes that slog the poor, and today's Liberals are literally different in name only. Kate Chaney, the Teal independent MP for Curtin, who, like all community independents, definitely not a Liberal, just her grandfather and father literally are. But like all girl bosses in the Teal, she's her own woman, and she has her own ideas, like raising the GST. That's why the Teals are the non-shit candidates, guys. Unlike the shit party, they want to tax the poor even more. Non-shit! Hey, at least she had the decency to wait until after the cost of living crisis that she voted against Labor solving. In fact, so better than the Liberals and the Teals that Kate Chaney also wants to get rid of the exemptions for food and medical services. Those were exemptions that the so-called shit party put in. In fairness, she offered the poor some compensation though. You'd get $3,300 in exchange for paying a higher GST. Oh, I'm sure that wouldn't be immediately gobbled up with a 5% increase on literally everything. Funnily enough, it was Keating who first brought up the idea of introducing a GST. It was founded on the sound argument that introducing one while also lowering income tax would simplify the tax code and eliminate avenues for people to evade taxes, but the Hawke government decided against it precisely because it hits poor people harder. Now, this isn't a video about why you should get rid of the GST. My personal opinion is, it's done. The egg can't be unscrambled. And on top of that, you'll never find me against any tax ever. My personal gripe isn't so much whether the rich or poor get taxed, it's that everyone isn't taxed at 100%, their money's put towards the eternal flame at the War Memorial in Canberra, so it ends up looking like that Bender statue. So you never, ever forget! That's true patriotism! My point is, These are your gods. These assholes. It's phenomenal how dumb the Chronically Online are. Redditors, ex-addicts, all the bozos that write shit endlessly like, I think David Pocock is closest to representing the actual Australian public. The Liberals are shit, Labor shit light, Church and Greens are non-shit. Simple. Shut up. Honestly, you and your supporters are the Maltese Terriers of human beings. You think you're far more important than you are. You spend your life on a cushion in a nice house, endlessly yapping because you're entitled as fuck, you're dumb as a dog. These people genuinely think, oh, the independents are better than the rest of the dogs. The reality is, they're fucking dogs. These are the same people that moaned endlessly online about Morrison's stage 3 tax cuts, but they support the totally not a party who wanted them implemented as originally intended with fuck tiny adjustments. Then, when the Albanese government proposed doing meaningful changes to them so the middle and working class got a bigger cut, the proposals and arguments made by the Teals were, well, exactly what you would expect to hear from people pretending that they're not Liberals when in reality they're Liberals. The peak of this was North Sydney wine mum Kylie Tink yelling, no, do the ScoMo cuts. Why? How's this? She argued that someone earning $140,000 a year isn't rich. Oh, okay. That is rich. No wonder they genuinely think they care about the poor. They sincerely seem to think that someone on 100k a year is on the poverty line. Well, they probably have to shop at one of those drab Pennywise stores like David Jones. Their counter-proposal, their apparently deep and meaningful reform that irons out the inequalities of wealth distribution amongst younger generations. They never shut the fuck up about that. This is always their line. Oh, we need meaningful tax reform. And what exactly is their meaningful tax reform? Broadening the taxation base to make up for the shortfall. Increasing the GST. Hashtag no shit progressive. Literally arguing for one of the most regressive things you could possibly argue for, which is increasing the GST. This has been their line for years. Noddy here, much like the Teal support base that she represents, not exactly the independent free thinkers they like to think they are. During the 2022 federal election, an organisation central to the success of the independents was Climate 200, which is just a fucking perfect name on so many levels for them, as not only is it just so indicative of their vote base. No, I nominally like this broad concept. That's why I'm a good person. But it was also set up by professional tantrum-throwing Nepo baby billionaire Simon Holmes à Court, which should be everything you need to know about the so-called independents independently voting against Labor's historic donations reforms that are set to give us some of the cleanest elections on earth. But it doesn't, because their voters are dumb but think they're geniuses for regurgitating the independents' exact talking points. But also, the fact that it's just a cheap lift from the fundraising organisation Kooyong 200's name that Simon Holmes à Court was part of until he did what he does best, which is chuck a tantrum. Like, come on. That's the only real difference between them and the Libs. One fucking word. It's the perfect symbolism that you can only get when you have millions of dollars to waste on marketing firms. AEC data shows that Climate 200's biggest donors include Scott Farquhar and Mike Cannon-Brooks, the founders and project management software company Atlassian, and Rob Keldoulis, an owner of a multi-million-dollar share trading firm. That's what they represent. Boy Liberals represent mining, girl Liberals represent finance. And according to the Chronically Online, this makes them more on the side of the average Aussie than the party of unions. Who'd have guessed someone that thinks in 240 character spurts would be such deep thinkers? In 2022, when Labor passed the Secure Jobs Better Pay bill because, you know, they're controlled by the billionaires. That's why they passed legislation that transferred hundreds of billions of dollars to the working class through a multitude of avenues, like increasing the monetary cap at which you could go through the small claims process to recover unpaid wages, open pathways to multi-employer bargaining for workers. Historic stuff. This is really, really big reform that'll change millions of workers' lives for the better. And yet you have the good guys like Warringah MP Zali Steggall arguing, how's this? That this legislation amounted to an attempt to unionise certain private workplaces. Ooh, perish the thought. Labor supporting organised labour. A new low for the shit-light party, am I right? Thank God we have these non-shit candidates holding them to account. I'll give them this though, they are progressive. Union busting before the unions have even been formed so you can bust them. I'm not lying when I say that's progressive. That is progressive in the field of union busting. I have never heard of preemptive strikes against potential strikes. She also argued that unlike the Climate Change Act, which she coincidentally supports, there wasn't an established social licence for the Fair Work Act, which she doesn't support. Yeah. The Labor Party getting elected for over 100 years hasn't established a well-worn mandate of improving workers' conditions. Nice usual blend of stupidity to match the evil that always surrounds the coloured Blazer Brigade. With the federal election looming, 8 of these so-called independents signed a letter promising to cut red tape. Red tape! Where have I heard that platitude before? Redefining small businesses to those hiring fewer than 15 staff to the real mum and pop organisations of Australia, those hiring 25. So, you know, one of George Columbaris' restaurants. By God, he was absolutely right in shirking his workers, as he is, according to the Teals, a struggling small businessman. I tell you, I honestly hate them so much more than old school Liberals, because old school Liberals, look at them. They knew they were evil. They revelled in it. That was awesome. They owned it. The worst thing about these new Liberals is the fact that they know they're evil. That's why they skulked away from the Liberal Party brand. That's why they paid marketers to rebrand them as independents, because they honestly also possess the ego to demand that they be treated as the good guys. They want it both ways. They want to continue exploiting workers and be applauded for it. They really are the living embodiment of who would be their hero if it was remotely fashionable for her to be so. The original girl boss, Margaret Thatcher, with her erudite observation that everyone always wants everyone else to be taxed. Just not them. These people don't represent the poor. Look at their electorates. Strip away the rhetoric. Please strip away the rhetoric. It is the most insufferable self-congratulatory drivel there is in Australian politics, and that's saying a lot. What you're left with is literally tax everyone they don't represent. Basically, that's what they want. They want the rich that don't donate to them to be taxed, and the poor to be taxed too, because the poor don't donate to them. In fact, I don't even think they really care if gas companies get taxed or not. They just use that as a smokescreen to give off the illusion that they're these very good, concerned people. When if you actually look at their voting record, they want the poor to be poorer. They don't want the poor to get tax breaks. They really hate the idea of them getting wages that they're owed, let alone a wage increase. They want the poor to pay for their kids to get a degree so their kids can get richer at the poor's expense. In fact, not only do they not want the poor to get a tax cut, now they want the poor to pay more tax. I tell you, anyone who buys this community independent shit, you want simple? Here's simple. You've been duped. Like and subscribe.